Morning, everyone. Recording this just a little after 9 a.m. today on Wednesday. I read something interesting overnight. Something on the surface would not seem related to anything going on in my life, but somebody had posted something simple about, how did you get introduced to Star Trek on Reddit? Well, for me, Star Trek is personal because I have a connection to it through a family member who's no longer with us. He passed a number of years ago. I'm not going to name names, but he passed a number of years ago. And I love the guy a lot, but he had his demons. But that brings me to my point today. Good people make bad decisions. I believe most people in their heart are good people. Despite all the rigmarole and frivolity and bull crap that goes on in the world today, despite all the pettiness and the fighting and the squabbling over nonsense, I think most people are good people. I just think humans, with our biological computers stuck up here in these domes we call a skull, we are apt to make bad choices. Our senses take in data and try to make a informed decision. Oftentimes those decisions have to be made in a split second. And we are prone to error. Human beings are not very efficient computers in the long run. We've got organic brains that are prone to falling apart, wearing out, getting confused, and unfortunately we cannot replace or upgrade our computer. The one we got is the one we've got. So we make bad choices all the time. I know I do. I screw stuff up all the time. I am far from perfect. And if you know anybody in your life who claims to always be right and is always correct and perfect, they need to do some self-reflection. It's okay to admit you're not perfect. It's okay to admit you make mistakes. It's okay to admit you've screwed up. That's a hard pill to swallow for anybody. I know it was for me growing up. And I still have my moments where I don't want to admit I'm wrong. But I think all people go through that to some degree. It's a matter of pride. Pride's a tough beast to slay. But I do believe all people, by and large, are good people. I think we just make bad choices. And the person I'm thinking of in my head that I love dearly, and I wish he was still around, he was a good guy. He was a very good guy. He just made some bad choices in his life. And those choices ended up owning him. And it's unfortunate. I wish he was still here. But I hope he knows that he is still talked about and loved. And I hope he understands that the people that care about him look past his shortcomings and still love him, and understand that as people, we're often weak. Human beings are very weak creatures, and we make mistakes. Sometimes we get caught up in a moment and our rage gets the best of us. Other times we're impulsive. We make irrational decisions because our brains are flush with chemicals telling us, do this, do this, do this. And we shouldn't do this. And sometimes we win out over that, and sometimes we don't. But I think most people are good people. We're just apt to making errors, apt to making mistakes. And when we go into conversations with people, or altercations, more importantly, if we approach the situation with the viewpoint that people are good, they just make errors, I think we'd be more forgiving of each other. Now, I'm not saying you have to be a doormat. In fact, I've made videos previously about not being a doormat. I'm not saying that you have to constantly forgive and let people fall into a pattern of behavior where they repeatedly do the same mistakes over and over and over. I'm not saying you have to forgive or tolerate that. But what I am saying is, if someone screws up on a project or a piece of schoolwork or just something you run into at your office, and it's a solitary thing, and it wasn't something that they did personally to you, approach it from the perspective that they just made a mistake. I think we'd be a lot better off. So yeah, thinking about Star Trek of all things, and when I say Star Trek, I mean the original Star Trek. Thinking about Star Trek leapfrogged me to thinking about a particular family member. He'd come over sometimes on the weekends when I was a kid. He'd always bring a box of VHS tapes, and on those tapes would be Star Trek episodes, and we'd sit up into the night and watch them. So he is fondly remembered, and those are the moments that I think represent who he was the most. He could have been out on the weekend doing adult things, and instead he was spending time with me. It says a lot, especially when I wasn't even his kid. So yeah, most people are good, but our ability to judge situations and come to a reasonable conclusion, we're not always batting 1,000. We're lucky to break 300. We make bad choices. We have to come to terms with that and push our pride aside to be more humble. Anyway, thank you for coming on this ride with me on this Wednesday. I needed to come bring packages to the post office to mail out. And I always like these drives. When I drive, I do my best thinking. I always have. I don't get to drive as much as I used to, but driving is when I'm able to think. Anyway, thank y'all for stopping by today. I look forward to speaking with you on Friday. You have a good day.